Okay, so you're here with us because you're the kind of person who wants to get right to the heart of things right. Like you want to understand a topic completely and thoroughly, um, but you don't want to wade through a ton of extra stuff.
Right, you want the distilled wisdom.
Exactly. And that is what we are all about here. Today, we are taking a deep dive into evening routines, and we are going to be pulling out the core wisdom from Jamie's Routines and Radiance podcast.
And our goal here isn't to review the podcast itself. It's to really zoom in on the insights about creating an evening routine that can totally change how you feel, how you focus, and how productive you are.
Exactly.
It's like a cheat sheet for a better end to your day.
I love that cheat sheet.
We'll be exploring the 6-step routine that Jamie outlines, and we'll unpack how each piece might help you be more focused, calmer, and, yeah, more productive.
Awesome. So let's jump right in. The first step in this 6-part evening routine is something that Jamie calls a digital sunset. And it's all about shutting off all screens by 7:00 p.m. I think for a lot of us, that probably sounds like a pretty big change. So what is the main idea behind this early tech curfew?
Well, it's really interesting when you think about our evolutionary history, right? Our brains are super in tune with natural light cycles. And the blue light that our screens give off, it basically tricks our bodies into thinking it's still daytime.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it ends up suppressing the production of melatonin, which is a super important hormone that helps us get ready for sleep. So by turning off our screens in the evening, we're basically letting our natural sleep-wake cycle do its thing.
Okay.
And this leads to deeper, more restful sleep, which then impacts everything else. It affects how well we think, how we feel overall.
Right, right. I know for me personally, on those nights where I am scrolling late,
Yeah.
I can really feel it the next day. I'm just groggy and out of it. But for anyone listening who might be thinking, okay, 7 p.m., this is not going to happen, there's a good tip here. If that feels too extreme, just try starting with powering down 30 minutes before your normal bedtime. Sometimes the smallest changes can have a huge impact.
Absolutely. It's about finding what works for you long term.
Right.
So after we've given our eyes and minds a break from the screens, the next step is about turning inward a little bit. At around 7:30 p.m., it's time for what Jamie calls reflect and release. What stands out to you about this part?
So this step involves a kind of specific journaling practice. Instead of just writing about your day, you're prompted to ask yourself 2 specific questions. What went well today, and what drained me?
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's described as a brain dump, like a way to get all those thoughts out of your head and onto paper.
Makes sense.
There's a really good example given where Jamie realized that checking work emails late at night was making them feel super anxious. And because of that reflection, they decided to set up specific times during the day for emails, those email hours. And it really made a difference.
I see. So it's about becoming more aware of how your daily experiences are affecting you, right? By taking the time to reflect, you start to see patterns and maybe some things that are triggering certain moods or impacting your energy.
Yeah, and in that example, it wasn't just about noticing what was happening. It was about actually changing behavior.
Yeah.
So this step isn't just about looking back. It's about learning from what happened and using that to set yourself up for a better tomorrow.
I like that.
And that proactive thinking goes right into the next step at 8:00 p.m., which is called Plan Tomorrow's Win. Now, this isn't about making a huge to-do list, the kind that makes you feel stressed before you even start the day. It's about picking just 3 key priorities for the next day. Why only 3?
Well, if you think about productivity and focus in general, limiting yourself to 3 priorities is a smart move. It helps you avoid decision fatigue, that mental exhaustion we get from having to make too many choices all the time.
Right.
By choosing just 3 things, you're giving your brain clear direction. So you wake up knowing exactly what needs to get done, which can really reduce that feeling of being overwhelmed.
It's so true.
That example of finished project draft, that's a great illustration of a focused, actionable priority.
Totally. Okay, so you've got those top priorities figured out, and now by 8:30 p.m., it's time to shift gears and move into what's called mindful unwind. This step is about taking action to lower your stress level by doing calming activities, things like yoga meditation, or maybe even a relaxing skincare routine.
Ah, I like that.
And there's a key difference here between this kind of intentional unwinding and just passively watching Netflix, which, let's face it, sometimes leaves us feeling more anxious than relaxed.
It's interesting how this step directly affects our bodies. Throughout the day, we're often releasing cortisol, which is the main stress hormone. Doing mindful activities helps us regulate and lower those cortisol levels.
So you're basically signaling to your mind and body that it's time to chill out.
Exactly. This is different from what happens when we watch something that keeps our minds really engaged. You know those shows that keep us on the edge of our seats? Oh, those can actually keep our stress response active without us even realizing it.
So it's like we're not really giving ourselves a break.
Right.
Okay, so moving on to 9:00 p.m.,
Mm?
we have Read to Grow. This is a dedicated 30 minutes of reading time, but with a specific focus. Books that are all about personal growth and development. And the advice here is to skip those super suspenseful thrillers that might keep your mind racing before bed. There are some specific books mentioned like Atomic Habits and The Power of Now. What's the thinking behind this kind of reading at this time of night?
Well, I think this is a great way to incorporate some continuous learning and positive thinking as you're getting ready for bed. Reading books that focus on growth can give you new ideas, help you solidify good habits that you're trying to build, and offer a kind of mental stimulation that's very different from, just passively scrolling through social media. The idea is that it's like a mental pep talk before you drift off to sleep, which I think is a cool concept. And it's worth mentioning that audiobooks count too, so it's adaptable to different preferences and routines.
Absolutely. And finally, we come to the last step in the routine at 9:30 p.m., which is called Gratitude Attitude. This one is all about the simple but really powerful act of listing 3 things you're grateful for. And the examples given are so relatable, things like a comfy bed, a funny thing your pet did that day, the thought of that first cup of coffee in the morning. Seems so small, but what is the impact of doing this?
You know what's really amazing about this practice is the increasing scientific evidence that supports it. Showing gratitude has actually been proven to change our brains over time. It helps us develop a more positive outlook and increase those overall feelings of well-being. By consciously thinking about the good things in our lives, even the little ones, we're shifting our mental state towards positivity as we get ready for sleep. And that can have a major impact on our mood and resilience.
So we've covered all 6 steps. Digital sunset, reflect and release plan, tomorrow's win mindful unwind, read to grow, and gratitude attitude. And the source material mentioned that after about 6 months of doing this routine pretty consistently, Jamie noticed some really positive changes. Things like better sleep quality, sharper mental focus throughout the day, and a noticeable shift towards a more positive and optimistic outlook.
And it's so important to remember that the key here isn't about being perfect right from the start. The routines that really stick are the ones that are sustainable. So, for those of you listening, if all 6 steps feel like too much to take on at once, try experimenting with just 1 or 2 that resonate with you. Maybe start with the gratitude practice or try powering down your devices a bit earlier. That could be a great place to begin.
For sure. Just as a quick reminder, those 6 steps are unplugging from screens by 7 p.m., taking some time to journal and reflect, figuring out your top 3 priorities for the next day, engaging in some mindful relaxation, reading something that inspires you, and ending the day by thinking about what you're thankful for.
This deep dive into one specific evening routine really brings up a bigger question for all of us. How much thought are you giving to how you end your day? And what small, maybe even seemingly insignificant change, like trying out one of these 6 steps, could you try to see if it starts a positive ripple effect, leading to a more focused, more peaceful, and ultimately more productive you?
And if you're curious about how other people approach their evenings, you might be interested to know that the original podcast we talked about includes an invitation to connect with Jamie's community and even share your own routine tweaks. While that's specific to that show, it just shows how valuable it can be to connect with others and see all the different ways people are being more intentional about how they end their day. Maybe it'll inspire you to find similar conversations and resources as you explore what works best for you.